Hello, Perla. Thank you for doing this interview.
Oh, my pleasure.
So let's start, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
I would like to talk about the new record which you're doing. And your new album is called A Letter to Leo and is already the second tribute record to Leonard Cohen after your album Bird on the Wire in the year of 2005, I guess. What was the intention to record a second tribute album?
After recording the first Bird on the Wire album, which was such a wonderful experience because I had artists that were very high up in their field to show up and sing on, are you okay?
I'm okay.
Okay, because when you move, it makes a sound. So should I start again?
That is true.
Okay. So, when I did my first tribute to Leonard Cohen, I felt like I was ready to do it. It took a long time to feel like I had any ownership of his songs, but I'd been singing them in concert, and it felt wonderful, and touring them. So I felt like I was ready to record this album, and I remember inviting Leonard to come to the studio, and he did, and he was so happy. He even took photographs with me to help promote the record, and he was behind me 100%. And as a result of his support and everything, we had a group of the best musicians in the business, and David Hidalgo did a beautiful duet with me on The Ballad of the Absent Mayor, and it was just very, very lovely, the whole experience. And then I continued touring his songs, and I felt like at that point I wanted to cover more Leonard Cohen songs, and I began to add songs on the road, and they felt great. And we moved on to touring Europe quite a bit, and it was just the natural progression that after adding a few of these songs that I hadn't sung before, that I wanted to record them eventually. That was years ago. And so we kept adding songs. And during COVID, I thought, I really want to maybe think about this next album. And I'd started recording with my musicians that I had toured with in Spain. We had started recording some of the songs we were doing with the idea that eventually it would be an album. But then after COVID hit, we discovered that all of those tapes were completely lost. So I was in absolute shock. And I couldn't, I didn't know if I could start again. Truthfully, I was absolutely devastated. And then I just thought, I have to keep moving, putting one foot in front of the other. And I told Leonard while he was sick that last year, we texted a lot, and I told him, I will never stop singing your songs. I know that I'm not the most famous person in the world, but because I love you, I'm never going to stop. So that memory of that conversation came back to me, and I said, I just have to start. So I put out a GoFundMe. I don't know if you know that in the States that you can raise money for projects. And I just told the story. This is what happened. And there was a bit of I was embarrassed about it, because who loses tracks of a record? Who just all one day decides they're gone? What happened? I felt very irresponsible. So there was a lot of shame involved with losing those recordings, and I blame myself. Other people said, "Oh no, it's not your fault," but as the producer, it is absolutely my responsibility. So I go onto GoFundMe, and I write the story completely and honestly about what happened. And what came back to me was an absolute shower of affection and support for the album, and we raised the money rather quickly to at least get started. It costs a lot to do a record, but we had enough to get going. And once that happened, there were songs I had never done before or recorded before that popped into my mind that I felt like I had to do. For instance, while we were recording our album, and it was after COVID, there was a lot of turmoil in the studio. I had a musician who had spent all this time alone during COVID. So being around people, all of a sudden there was a severe level of anxiety. And when we didn't agree musically on something, he would cry. He burst into tears about something. And this was, I felt terrible. And there were a lot of emotions running wild during these sessions. And then the person who had been my musical director suffered from, having been sober for years, suffered from going back to drinking quite a bit. And that made the experience, I was just so worried about him, and having been a child who grew up with an alcoholic father, it just brought up all these feelings for me, and it was difficult. It was very, very difficult. But somehow we finished those days of recording in Spain, and then I went back home, and honestly I thought, I am putting this away and I'm never going to listen to it again. But one thing, because it was just full of so much, it was like, a bomb ready to go off. And then so I left it for a bit, thinking and just meditating on it. But one thing came up during that chaos in the rehearsal when I thought, I really want to do democracy. Because I feel like, not just our country, the US, but there are things happening everywhere that I find really frightening. And the US used to be this beacon of what was right, and supporting the notion that peace is the way to go, and that democracy is what will lead us to that. So I was obsessed with wanting to do democracy. I put the rest of the record aside, and democracy is what I was, So I asked a friend, one of the guys in the band who I love, Luis Gartes, I said, can you please just do a track for me for democracy? And I want it to sound immediate, and I want it to have like a hip hop kind of beat sound that. Because what I feel that Leonard wrote in that lyric, I feel like it was a rap. I really do. I feel like it was a commentary on what is happening in the US and the obstacles that we have to overcome. So I asked him to do that, and he sent it back to me. He said, I don't really do this, but I'm going to send it back to you, and you just tell me what you think. And he sent it back to me. It was terrible. And but it was an example, so I said, thank you very much. And then I called a friend of mine who's very well known in the United States, very famous writer and a producer of these kinds of tracks. And he's always busy, but I said, listen, Michael Elizondo is his name. And I said, Mike, can you help me? This is my idea. This is what I want to do. And Mike immediately said yes. He said, yes, I have some time. Let me just do it. And in a few days, he had a beautiful track for me. And all I had to do was put on the vocals, and I had an actor, a Broadway actor who's very famous in the United States and probably all over the world, because he's done movies and television, and Patrick Page. And I asked him, I am looking for a voice of Leonard Cohen to do a second voice on this song. And you have that. It's got a very low and grave kind of vocal tone, and he said, oh my goodness, I would love to do it. I've been a fan of Leonard's forever, and I wanted to even do a one-man show of Leonard Cohen songs. And he said, I would love to do this. So I flew to New York and recorded him and it turned out great. And then I had the backing vocalists come in, and I sang with my daughter. Another singer, a friend of mine who has worked, with Tom Jones and Barry Manilow, and she's Jimi Hendrix's cousin. She came in with her daughter, who's a great singer, and we all did the choruses, and it's my favorite, one of my favorite tracks on the record, and I think it's very necessary, and I'm feeling like it was very immediate, and that actually inspired me to get back into the studio and start finishing what we had started. And then I also wrote a song about my relationship with Leonard called The L of Your First Name, the C of Your Last, about our relationship and how it started and how
did it start?
How did our relationship start? Well, that goes way back. When I first met Leonard Cohen, well, I got a phone call actually saying everybody's been auditioning for Leonard and we just haven't found the right singer. We have Julie Christensen, but we need another singer. And she mentioned your name and that you've worked together. And I said, yes, I would love to come. And I said, what do I need to prepare? And it was Roscoe back on the phone. And he said, no, you don't need to prepare anything. Just come in. And I said, okay. I was very kind of excited about the idea. And I got off the phone and I thought to myself, the first thing I thought to myself was, who's Leonard Cohen? I mean, I've heard of the Leonard Cohen, with back in the 60s, Judy Collins had recorded his songs, and he had a couple of famous songs. I remembered Suzanne, and I remembered Sisters of Mercy, I think also Judy Collins did. So I went to the record store, Tower Records on Sunset, and I found everything I could find on Leonard Cohen. And then I sat to listen to his music, and I was taken away by it. The poetry, just the sensitivity of it, the delicate nature of his turn of phrase, and it reminded me a lot of the music that I grew up with, because I grew up in a Spanish-speaking family, and the songwriters that my father and my mother listened to were the great Spanish songwriters who relied on poetry. So Leonard Cohen was very much like that, and I felt at home with his music. So I was invited to come to the studio, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's going to be so much fun, and I have to really be prepared to make a first impression. And I thought the first thing I need to think about is, what am I going to wear, right? So I thought about it, and I listened to the music, and I showed up. Roscoe Beck says, would you like to meet Leonard? He would like to meet you before you do anything else. And I said, yes, absolutely. And I see this figure walking toward me, and we both just start to laugh a little bit, because I am dressed in white from head to toe, and Leonard, of course, is dressed in black from head to toe. So we both he took my hand and he said, darling, this is a match made in heaven. And, from then on, we did the audition, and I sang, my gosh, what was the hardest song that I sang? Might be First We Take Manhattan, because there's a part in the middle where the choral singers have to go, one voice has to go way, way high. And Julie knew that I could do that. So she said, you take that, and, you nail it, sister. And so that was really fun. And after that, he just said, okay.
After you've been on a world tour in '88 and in '93,
right,
the biggest world tour after or before the retreat in the Zen monastery, what kind of memories do you have to these tours?
The tours, the first tour, I was just so thrilled. I'd never, ever experienced anything like that in my life. It was the I'm Your Man tour. So that record was huge in Europe. Leonard was a rock star. You know, people were following him in the street for autographs, and people would wait at the stage door for him afterwards, and I couldn't believe it. I thought, boy, this world over here in Europe is very different. When someone who's a real poet who writes beautiful, beautiful songs and doesn't necessarily consider himself a singer can be a big star here. And I said, this is the kind of place I want to live in. So that was exciting. And seeing my first time in Europe, it was my first time traveling outside of the country. That wasn't Mexico. So for me, it was absolutely eye-opening. I loved walking. We would walk together a lot in the streets of Spain, have a coffee in one of the bars that's open in the morning, and it was magical. Everything about it was magical. And in '93, it was a different experience because we in the United States, I think, were faced with some very harsh realities in government, in the way things were happening. And Leonard wrote The Future, which is an intense observation of what was going on, and I think specifically in the United States. So the tour itself, and with some incredible songs in that record, as you know, I mean, Anthem is on that record, so that's a very hopeful song, where the future is doesn't look good, people. If you don't shape up, it does not look good. But so I felt like the tour was also struggling with some terrible moments, and then some. And I felt that Leonard was struggling with some turmoil during that time as well.
Do you think that the song "Democracy" you've mentioned, you can compare with the situation, yes, around about 30 years ago, with the situation right now?
Oh,
in the US?
Absolutely. I mean, look at what's going on. We have never faced what we're facing today. Not just our country, but in the world. It's pretty horrifying what's happening. So yeah, and I oftentimes, listening to Democracy, I just say, wow, what would Leonard have to say about that right now?
Maybe back to the new record and the songs. Are there any criteria you've had for the selection of the songs? There are 11 songs, some new ones, but even some songs from the older ages, like A Singer Must Die, or some new, like You Want It Darker. What was the criteria for choosing those songs? Well,
Leonard used to say that you do not choose music, it chooses you. So I don't think I chose these songs. I think they chose me. Because it's interesting. When I heard You Want It Darker for the first time, I put it away. I put it away because I said, this is very specific to Leonard. It's very personal. And it was almost too personal. It was sort of it was a secret going on that I walked in on. And I just said, I have to leave this alone. And then it kept calling me back. It just, something about it kept calling me back, because I was there when Leonard was writing it, and he would say, "Oh, darling, sing on these Hananis, Hanani, Hanani, I'm ready, my Lord, and I just thought, and he said, Hanani is an exclamation. It's like, like he's ready to go. And I maybe didn't want to think about that either, but I was there and we were talking about it, and then he decided to use the chorus from the temple where he was going, the choir of male voices, and I thought that was a great idea. But that chorus would go in my head constantly, and I felt like, this song feels like something that I can do justice to. Like, I wanted to sing it because, you know, we're all getting older and we're all headed to the same place. I started to do it with my band in Spain, and I got to the point where I just love that song, and I love everything about it.
Songs like Democracy or songs like You Want It Darker, some of them you've played together with Leonard Cohen, some you've covered after he's passed away. How do you care for covering a song? Is it something like a rendition or more like a transformation? Do you try to be very original, or do you give it your own interpretation?
It depends on the song. I feel like in order to sing someone else's material, especially Leonard, because, you know, we have a personal relationship. And he was the one that instigated, you know, me singing his songs. He really felt that something about me was right for his material. The very first song that he had me sing was Bird on the Wire. But, you know, I'm the kind of singer that I can't say, oh, that's a song I want to sing. It has to be part of me. The song has to be, so I couldn't be a jingle singer. In the United States, a jingle singer is somebody who comes in and sings a commercial about soap. And there are people who do that very, very well. For me, I would have to love soap so much in order to be a jingle singer, but I don't. So I had to, when Leonard said, oh, darling, you know, I'd like for you to sing Bird on the Wire for Roshi's birthday party that I'm giving. I said, no. I just got off the road in 1988, having heard Leonard sing it hundreds of times. And I couldn't imagine anyone else singing that song. And he said, oh, don't say no to me just yet. Take your time and then see how it feels. And then if you say no, I will respect that. And so I had a friend of mine play the guitar for me all day long, and we worked on that song. And I remember after a while, it started feeling like mine. And in a moment of arrogance, I said to him, you know what? I own this song now. And he said, oh, no, you don't. This song owns you. And it's a tribute to a really tasty song. You know, when a song is written so beautifully and has so much soul to it, when it clicks for me, then I feel like it's in my body, it's part of my DNA, and then I can sing it, only then. So it isn't that I just say, oh, I'd like to sing that song. I say, well, that's a good song. Let's try and see how it feels. And then if it doesn't feel right, I don't do it.
Okay. There's another song which is called Awakened. Mm-hmm. Awakened in which way?
Awakened in every way.
Okay.
Because I was this kid, basically. When I met Leonard Cohen, there was an awakening that happened. An awakening that, this is possible. It's possible to sing things of great beauty. It's possible to not have to sing disco music to pay your rent. It's possible to have respect for the material that you get to make your living doing. You know that, and it takes a lot of courage. That's part of what this song is. I wrote this song with David Batteau, my songwriting partner, and to say I'm going to go out in the world and be an artist could sound stupid, but to me, that's the bravest thing you can do. To say, this is what I'm gonna do. You know, I'm going to do that, and you're going to spread beauty, and you're going to devote yourself to the investigation into your heart and soul and the human condition. So that's what awakened is. I also just, and it's not just about devoting yourself to art, it's devoting yourself to what you believe. You know, if the activists who are out there fighting and the brave fight of trying to show what is right and what is wrong, and that and gather everyone together to think about those things. You know, those are very important things, and I believe that music and art are very, very important things. So the idea that this is what you're going to do for the rest of your life is a very brave undertaking, and I celebrate those who do it.
Okay. There's another Leonard Cohen song on this record which is called "A Singer Must Die." There are many interpretations about that song. What do you know about that song, and do you have an idea, or has Leonard Cohen ever told you anything about the meaning of the songs?
Well, that's interesting, because I think one of the reasons, and I say this all the time, one of the reasons that Leonard and I stayed friends, because he doesn't always stay friends with the people that he knows. He does. But we stayed friends till the end. We were texting each other, you know, November 2016. And yeah, and I believe that the reason we stayed so close for so long was that I never asked him what his songs meant. So I always attack a song, especially like "A Singer Must Die," with what do I think about it? You know, what does it say to me? There are some things in there that are murky and that aren't necessarily clear to me, but that's okay. To me, what that song means is that if you're going to be an artist, if you're going to be in the world as someone who is performing or reciting poetry or writing, you just have to tell the truth. And that's what this song means to me. It's like, we can tell if you don't tell the truth. There are a lot of singers that are amazing, and they can acrobatically get through every song always with perfection, but that doesn't mean that it's going to move me. If it's not the truth, it's not going to move me. And a person who's telling the truth with one note, it'll hit you and tears will start coming.
Maybe something about your own song, which is called "L of Your First Name." What is the story behind this song?
The story behind that song, and it's funny, you know, people always ask me, were you and Leonard lovers? That question comes up all the time. And the answer is, how dare you? What we had is deeper than that. What we had was, you know, the adventure of going off into that world of make-believe and poetry and surrealism and investigating things and having permission, giving each other permission to talk about it all. And like there's nothing off the table. You can mention anything, you can talk about anything, and see where it goes. You know, those kinds of relationships are rare, very rare. So that's where the L of your first name and the C of your last are etched in my heart. And that, because once you do that, that's what you look for in your relationships, that you can be free. It's a freedom, you know, and that's what I cherished about what we had.
Your record will be out in September 2024. It will be the year of the 19th anniversary of
Leonard's birth, yeah.
And what do you think, what is staying of Leonard Cohen's work? What remains? Everything
remains. Leonard, you know, wasn't appreciated in a lot of countries. You know, he got terrible reviews when we went out in 1988. The British weren't very nice to him, and I remember the US gave him terrible reviews. And the fact that he came back later in life, when he was actually quite ill, to do those last tours, that cemented him as a power. What I hope people do, much like Shakespeare, I'm reading about Shakespeare right now, and I know that what keeps him alive are the people that keep doing Shakespeare, performing Shakespeare, and the people that keep talking about him. That's what, you know, Leonard, because the work is there. It's brilliant. And I would say to people, listen to the other songs, because frankly, Hallelujah is the least of the masterpieces. Absolutely. You know, listen to Take This Waltz, for instance. Listen to Bird on the Wire is, you know, to me, so incredible. But I could go on and on and on. I mean, and frankly, you know, I told Leonard that I would never stop singing his music. So as long as I can, and as long as I can afford to, I will continue making Leonard Cohen recordings.
You've mentioned the song Take This Waltz. We are sitting here in Madrid.
I know. It's very magical. Yeah, Madrid.
Leonard Cohen was a self-confessed fan of the Spanish poet Federico García Lorca. Now you have Cohen's Take This Waltz on your record, which is lyrically based on Lorca. What connects you to Lorca?
You know, I didn't know who Lorca was until I met Leonard Cohen. And then I started reading his poetry and reading his story, which is very tragic. But being in Spain with Leonard, when we were touring that record, the Spanish just went crazy for Leonard. And he said that Lorca is the reason that he became a poet in the first place. So it's a powerful place. And when I performed here, there's a little cafe jazz club in Madrid called Café Central. And I was here when I got news that Leonard had died. I was absolutely stunned and walking the streets weeping every day. And I was in Paris on that day, came to Madrid the very next day. Ben Sidran, wonderful jazz artist, invited me to come to his concert at Café Central. And I go to Café Central and everyone was so kind to me. I didn't even expect anyone would know who I was, but everyone was so kind to me. The owner of the club came over and expressed his condolences. He said, please, my door is open to you. Come back and sing here whenever you want. Ben Sidran was so kind. He performed a tribute to Leonard Cohen that night for me. And then I walked out and I just didn't know this area much at all. Walked out and almost right into a statue of Federico García Lorca that was in the square. So a lot of things like that happen in Europe. I think it's a very magical place, Spain especially.
Back to the year 2005, there was a special event which was called Came So Far for Beauty, which has to do with the film I'm Your Man. And there you've performed together with Mr. Nick Cave. Mm-hmm. From my point of view, it's an important question to me because for me, he is something like, the next generation of Leonard Cohen. What do you think about that? Can you compare Nick Cave's work with Leonard Cohen's work? Is there a special connection? And do you agree or do you have something totally different in mind?
I don't know Nick Cave's work well enough. I know some of his songs that touch me very deeply, and he's beautiful, beautiful writer. But that tour, I just want to go back to talk about that tour, I'm Your Man. That was produced by Hal Willner. Hal Willner, who we lost, to COVID. and Hal put this group together of artists. I just don't even know how in my life I would be lucky enough to be on a stage with, Rufus Wainwright, the McGarrigles, Nick Cave, of course, Laurie Anderson, Lou Reed. The list just goes on and on of the people that Hal Willner brought in. It's an enormous concert, and we never thought it would go, as we toured it. I mean, this huge company went on the road. And at times, one of the reasons that Hal and I became very good friends is that I'm very organized. I like to do things in a certain way, and Hal just allows for chaos to take over. And a lot of times he said, out of chaos, these great things will come. And that is actually why I'm dedicating this record to Hal Willner, because he gave me the, kind of inspiration that when things are a big mess, just keep going, because something nice might come out of it at the end. You'll have to wait and see. So, and Nick Cave was one of these people that I had never known much about. And we performed Suzanne together. And I felt this percolation in what the rhythm, that could have been Steve Bernstein too, the arrangement. He was singing it in this very intense, slow kind of way, but underneath there was this driving rhythm. And it was almost like the coffee pot's about to explode. Yet he was smooth as silk and in control. And he made a huge impression on me. And I asked him, so what do you, and he dresses in a suit every day. So I love that. That's very Leonard Cohen. And I said, so, how do you go about your career? Because I knew that his career was just starting to really explode. And he said, well, I treat it like a business every day. I put on my suit. And my studio and my office are in my house. So I put on my suit to go to my office. And I just love that. Like, he's just every day, his mindset is, I'm going to dress up and get to work. I don't do that. I mean, I stay in my pajamas.
Maybe one of the last question, please. Before I ask you about the future plans, how
Sure.
you go on tour maybe.
Yeah.
Have you seen the film Hal Willner, A Song and a Journey, I guess? Yes?
No.
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 And have you seen the TV series So Long Marian?
No.
Okay. So I don't need to ask you about
Well,
that.
yeah, I mean, it's funny.
I could ask you why you doesn't seen it.
Right. Hallelujah, because, I happen to know people make such a big thing about Hallelujah, and Leonard has said to me that it wasn't his favorite song. So I don't feel the need to jump on board. And, who was it recently that said something about Hallelujah, which I thought was very thoughtful? The singer, this very popular singer today, kind of said, whoa, people, Hallelujah, is not the song you think it is. If you just take a minute and read the lyrics. Somebody once said, I was at the dentist's office once, and the dentist said to me, my daughter, she wants to use Hallelujah for her wedding. And I said, it's not a wedding song. And then people who rewrite it, just rewriting Leonard Cohen lyric, give me a break. Don't do that. I mean, that would be my advice. But so that's Hallelujah. Marianne, Leonard has spoken to me at length about that relationship, and as tender as he was to her at the end, and he wrote her this very sweet letter and everything, Leonard was, at the time of their relationship, he needed somebody to take care of him, and he found a lovely woman to do that. But, Leonard never had any intention of marrying anyone. And I can't speak to the level of love that he had for her. But I think those days in Greece were pretty crazy. There were a lot of drugs involved and a lot of, a lot of events that were odd.
I was thrilled about your interpretation of this anti-fascist anthem, the Partisan, you've put on your record. What was the intention to do this song?
At the time, we actually were in New York, and we went to Hal Willner's memorial. And the things were getting, Ukraine, it was just at the start of that, I think. And it just felt out of control. And to us, it was very important that we preserve democracy. And it also felt like once that war, could create a terrible imbalance of power, and that it would affect the entire world. And I thought about the partisan, and that was about the resistance, and I felt that it was time to do it, and I happened to have a really wonderful oud player in my band, and I loved John Belazikian so much, and Leonard did too. So anyway, I decided we would do it, and I brushed up on my French and did the best I could.
You did it good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this interview, Perla. I really thank you. Maybe I ask you about your future plans. Do you go on tour in this year, next year?
Yes.
What are your plans?
Well, I think we're going to start touring a little bit in Spain in November. And then following will be all of the rest of Europe, and that'll be probably in the spring into the summer, and then U.S. dates as well. We'll be releasing the record in the U.S. On the 22nd.
I say thank you again.
Thank you.
I appreciated
it's so great
your
to see
time
you.
for
My
doing this
pleasure.
interview here in Madrid.
Yeah.
And see you next time on tour.
And thanks for coming to Madrid to see me.
Thank you.